Somewhere in a workshop in Foshan, engineers just solved a problem that's kept Chinese home cooking chained to an open flame for over a century. Not a bigger burner, not a better regulator. A coil. A curved induction coil shaped exactly like the bottom of a wok. And once that shape clicked into place, it unlocked something induction cooktops have never been able to do at home. Real wok hay. The smoky, seared flavor that used to require a jet of open fire. If this spreads the way early sales numbers suggest it's spreading, the gas stove hissing in your kitchen right now might be cooking its last meal. Cooking with fire feels like one of those things nobody questions. You turn a knob, gas ignites, heat rises, food cooks. It's been the default for so long that almost nobody stops to ask why. Step back for a second. Cooking over an open flame is mechanically the same thing humans have done since discovering fire, just with better plumbing. Electric coils came later. Induction cooktops came later still, in the 1970s. And yet gas held on stubbornly, in kitchens all over the world, especially anywhere serious wok cooking happens. What changed is the question engineers finally asked. Does a wok actually need a flame underneath it? A growing number of Chinese appliance makers think the answer is no, and they've spent the last few years quietly proving it. Here's the part that stays invisible until you actually try to replace a gas burner. Standard flat induction cooktops, the kind that have been on the market since the 1970s and dominate kitchens across Europe and North America, came with a catch nobody in wok cooking cultures could ignore. Woks are round-bottomed. Induction plates are flat. Put a curved wok on a flat coil, and only a small ring of metal ever touches the magnetic field directly. The center barely heats. The edges scorch. You lose the violent, uneven heat gradient that actual wok cooking depends on, the part that lets you sear meat at one edge while gently steaming vegetables toward the middle. Home cooks who tried switching to induction for wok work almost always gave up and went back to gas. So the clean, efficient, flameless option that had already replaced gas everywhere else quietly failed at the one dish culturally tied to fire itself. Engineers knew this for years. Flat coils were designed for flat pans, pots, kettles. Curving a coil sounds simple until you actually try it. Bend the copper windings and the magnetic field distorts unevenly, heating spots become unpredictable, and the whole system risks overheating in some zones while barely warming others. For a long time, wok-shaped and inductive seemed like a contradiction. You could have a wok, or you could have induction, not both. So a handful of Chinese kitchen appliance companies, some already dominant in small appliances at home, asked a different question. What if, instead of forcing a round pan onto a flat field, the coil itself was built to match the wok's curve, and the power delivered to it was pushed far higher than anything in a normal home kitchen? This is where it gets genuinely interesting. MIDI's commercial grade induction wok line, sold under what it calls IH concave technology, uses a bowl-shaped coil array nested directly into the cooktop, matching the geometry of a standard 32 centimeters wok almost exactly. In plain terms, instead of one flat ring of copper winding, the coil is split into multiple curved zones, stacked to trace the wok's slope from base to rim. Each zone can be powered independently, so the base gets a concentrated blast of heat while the upper walls get a gentler one, mimicking the heat gradient an open flame naturally produces. Paired with that geometry is raw power, where a typical home induction burner tops out around 2,000 to 2,600 watts. These wok-specific units push 5,000 watts or more, some commercial versions reaching past 8,000, closer to what a professional gas wok range actually delivers. Setup, instead of retrofitting gas lines and ventilation for an open flame, becomes plugging into a standard high-amperage outlet. No propane tank, no gas line, no combustion byproducts venting into the room. The immediate practical result: a cooktop that can hit true wok searing temperatures above 200 degrees Celsius at the base within seconds, without a single open flame anywhere in the kitchen. Here's where the story stops being just a better burner and becomes something bigger. Once you solve curved induction, you're no longer just building a stove, you're building a heat delivery system precise enough to replicate techniques that used to require decades of a chef's hand-controlling flame height. And that opens the door to things gas could never do reliably. Take Joyoung, a company originally known for soy milk makers and small kitchen electrics, which brought that same precision heating know-how into its commercial wok series, letting restaurants program exact temperature curves for specific dishes, something no human hand on a gas valve can replicate identically every single time. Then there's Supor, whose induction wok range adds real-time temperature sensing embedded directly in the cooking surface, adjusting output mid-stir without the cook touching a dial. And Bear, a brand better known for small household gadgets, has pushed the same curved coil approach into compact home units, small enough for an apartment kitchen, betting that flameless wok cooking won't stay a restaurant, only feature for long. What started as let's make induction actually work for a wok turned into an entire category of Chinese appliance makers, several of them already dominant in home electronics, converging on solving the one cooking method induction had never been able to touch. Quick question, while we're on this. Would you actually trust a coil and a magnetic field to sear your dinner the way an open flame does? Or does something about real fire still feel irreplaceable to you? Drop your honest answer in the comments. And if this kind of deep dive into how everyday kitchen tech quietly reinvents itself is your thing, consider subscribing. There's more of this coming. None of this means gas stoves are disappearing overnight, and it's worth being upfront about why. Price is still a real barrier. High-power curved induction units start around $600 to $1,200 for home versions, well above a standard gas or flat induction range, and commercial restaurant units built for professional kitchens can run into the several $1,000 range once ventilation and electrical upgrades are factored in. A basic gas burner setup, by comparison, remains far cheaper to install almost anywhere gas lines already exist. There are functional gaps too. Chefs testing these units have noted the sensation still differs slightly from open flame. No visible fire to gauge by eye. No flame lick up the pan's edge that experienced cooks instinctively read. Some professional kitchens have also flagged that sustained high-wattage use draws serious electrical capacity, requiring rewiring that older restaurant spaces weren't built for. And there's a dependency question too. These systems rely on stable, high-amperage power, which means a kitchen's cooking capability now depends partly on the electrical grid holding steady, the same vulnerability every other flameless appliance shares. And it's worth saying plainly, this is still an emerging category. It's growing fast, especially in urban Chinese markets, pushing to phase out gas appliances in dense apartment buildings. But it hasn't displaced gas wok cooking in restaurants or homes at scale yet. It's competing with it, not replacing it, at least for now. Step back, and this isn't really a story about stoves. It's a story about what happens when a handful of engineers refuse to accept that a shape as old as the wok itself has to stay tied to fire. First it was flat cooking surfaces going electric. Now it's the one curved, stubborn holdout, finally bending to the same shift. The pattern suggests it won't stop there. A flame under a pan was never really about heat alone either. It was a stand, in for control, precision a human hand had to learn over years of practice. Curved coils and programmable wattage just solved a small, specific version of that problem in a wok-shaped piece of metal. The bigger question is how much of the rest of cooking, the parts we still assume need a flame to feel authentic, quietly gets rebuilt the same way next. What do you think? Is flameless wok cooking like this actually ready to replace something as culturally rooted as cooking over real fire? Or is there something a flame does that a coil and a sensor never will? Let me know in the comments. Hit like if this changed how you look at your own kitchen. And subscribe if you want to keep following where this kind of quiet, unglamorous innovation goes next.